Thank you so much for joining us, Soulmates. How about if we take it back to the top and run back our top stories of the day? A University of Georgia football player and staff member are dead following a car crash. The university says the player is 20-year-old Devin Wilcock, and the staff member is 24-year-old Chandler LaCroix. Police say the accident happened just hours after the team celebrated its national championship. Police say the vehicle veered off the road and crashed into multiple trees and poles. Two other members of the program were in that car as well and are in stable condition in the hospital. A vigil was held overnight for a Black Riverside County Sheriff's deputy killed while responding to a domestic violence call. When Deputy Darnell Calhoun approached the home, the suspect started shooting at him. Eventually, the suspect was ultimately wounded after getting into a shootout with other deputies and was then taken into custody. The sheriff said Deputy Calhoun joined the department last February after serving with the San Diego Police Department. And to Florida now, where at least 8 people were shot at a Martin Luther King Jr. Day block party. It happened at Ellis Park in Fort Pierce, and up to 1,000 people were in attendance. The sheriff's office tells us one of the victims is in critical condition and others were hurt by the chaos, by the sound of gunshots, hearing gunshots. It's believed there is more than one suspect. No arrests have been made at this time, but police say they have several leads from witnesses. And lastly here, dramatic new video shows a military veteran taking down a knife-wielding man at a Walmart in Columbia, South Carolina. The man with the knife reportedly came in demanding $20. The veteran was shopping at the store and used a checkout lane pole to subdue the man with the knife. The armed man was eventually taken into police custody. Recorder Live, back to you.
Thanks, Courtney. Now, Soulmates, imagine being on a cruise, coasting to Cozumel, Mexico, when your captain gets over the loudspeaker to announce that the entire ship will be stopping to rescue refugees. Well, that's exactly what happened to a group of travelers, all highlighting the ongoing crisis at the border. Marlisa Goldsmith has the very latest.
2 months ago, the Coast Guard told us 5,000 migrants were rescued, many by cruise ships, and sent back home in 2022. But based on what we saw over the weekend, that's not stopping people who are desperate to get out of Cuba.
We are proceeding closer to assess their condition.
This is what passengers on the MSC Meraviglia heard come over the loudspeakers as they sailed back to Port Canaveral on Saturday from a cruise to Cozumel. The crew alerted passengers the ship would be stopping to help these people floating at sea on a makeshift raft. A Fox 35 viewer on board recorded the rescue on her phone. You can see Cuban migrants on the water as the Meraviglia approaches. An MSC spokesperson told us the crew did everything right in a statement saying, "Our crew notified the United States Coast Guard and started a rescue operation immediately." The cruise ship took 24 migrants on board. Medical personnel checked them out, and the crew took care of them overnight until the ship docked at Port Canaveral on Sunday. Once in port, the Coast Guard turned them over to U.S. Border Protection. This is the latest cruise ship rescue we've reported on in the last few months. Back in October, we spoke with a passenger on board another MSC cruise ship who saw a similar rescue at sea.
And it was full of people from Cuba asking for water and just basically asking for help.
Cuban migrants often sail on makeshift boats and rafts in a desperate attempt to flee their country because they are afraid of the future of the government.
Wood surrounded by styrofoam, floating canisters, tarps, and plywood. Ultimately, anything that will float.
Earlier this month, Governor Ron DeSantis activated the Florida National Guard to respond to a flood of mostly Cuban migrants arriving by boat in southern Florida. Just today, Coast Guard crews tweeted they sent 82 people back to Cuba. New numbers released this afternoon by the U.S. Coast Guard show nearly 5,000 Cubans have been stopped by the Coast Guard since October 1st, compared to around 800 in 2021 and just 49 in 2020.
Cuban Americans we spoke with tell us since the pandemic, living conditions in Cuba have gotten really tough. They tell us there are shortages of medical supplies and basic prescriptions. The political situation is unstable, and that has scared a lot of people who are desperate to get out any way they can. Reporting in Studio B, Marlisa Goldsmith, Fox 35 News.
Our thanks to Marlisa Goldsmith for that story. I've been to Cuba. I think you've also been to Cuba before. I'm not surprised that the pandemic has had a heavy effect on the people of Cuba, on the economy of Cuba. We're seeing not just Cuba, but we're seeing, migrants from Haiti, migrants from lots of different areas, including Central America and even Mexico, that are coming to our shores. It's good to see that there's a company out there that saw the humanity on the seas and saw these as human beings and not just as migrants, right? But these are people, these are families that are fleeing a situation. And so I think, and according to the report, they did all the right things by contacting the Coast Guard, giving them a heads up of what they were doing. They clothed them, they sheltered them on the ship. And then turn them over to the authorities for processing. I think that's the best news that I've heard related to sort of the brokenness of our immigration system, right? I mean, absent Congress, actually passing laws and doing an overhaul of our immigration system, unfortunately, we'll probably expect more on the sea rescues like this. And
no matter where you stand on immigration, refugees is what we used to call, use the term back in the day. No matter where you stand, this is, I agree with you, a practice of humanity first and foremost, and then you deal with the politics of it after, they've been rescued and taken care of. But can you just imagine how desperate the situation may be or is in Cuba for someone to risk their life like that in the middle of this sea with all kind of dangers surrounding them? You've been to Cuba, and I've been to Cuba, and so we know how proud those folks are, and they love their country. So to make that decision to leave and leave with such urgency and danger and without the proper resources, I can only imagine just how desperate things have gotten in that country, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's also important to note that asylum is a human right, and so they could be, coming here seeking asylum, and so we'll continue to keep our eye on that story and more. But moving along, over 3 dozen historic Black churches will receive $4 million in grants to help with renovations and preservation of their buildings. The National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund announced on MLK Day that 35 churches across the country will receive the first round of its Preserving Black Churches grants, being funded by $20 million endowment by Lilly Endowment Initiative. Officials say that the focus is not only on the preservation of the physical building, but also on the profound stories embodied in their walls, their landscapes, their cemeteries, and their role as centers of Black religion, culture, and service is fundamental to understanding the lived experience of Black Americans. The fund has raised, get this, more than $80 million since its launch in 2017.
That is some good news. Keep that money coming. We need these Black churches. And speaking of Black Twitter is having a heated debate. And we thought we'd jump in on the conversation, soulmates. So there's an HBCU professor recently who released his dress code for his class, this dress code policy for his students. And that was reposted, and it gained about 2.9 million views in about a week. Now, the syllabus states that it bans students from wearing hoodies, do-rags, bonnets, and 3 styles of shorts, that being booty, coochie, cutter, and twerking shorts. This is how this professor, phrased it and coined it in his syllabus for the students not to show up in this. Forbes reported that the instructor is a Black male computer science professor at North Carolina A&T University, but the article does not name him. Many people supported the dress code, but there are some others on Black Twitter who you best believe pushed back.
The new head coach of Bethune-Cookman, Ed Reed, is apologizing for an explicit rant in which he criticized the on-campus conditions at Bethune and that of other HBCUs. Reed was seen ranting over the amount of trash he encountered on campus and within the football facilities. Reed, in the rant, also claimed his office was not cleaned out either upon arrival as head coach. In a statement, he said his language was, quote, unacceptable, and that he fell victim while engaging online with critics during the viral rant.
And I saw the rant, and I knew he was going to have to apologize because he absolutely snapped.
He went in?
He went all the way in. It was pretty foul. However, what he was addressing was very, very real. And I saw it thereafter. And so, you know, when it plays back, the comments still, come up on that feed. And there were a lot of students and HBCU alumni who were saying, you know, he ain't lying. You know, welcome to our world. And they supported him in saying that, you know, Deion Sanders, Coach Primetime, was absolutely right. And I think he was just so dismayed by the condition of not only the field, but other areas of Bethune-Cookman's campus. Now, I know that they've just suffered some damage due to storms, but there were, again, a lot of people in the comments saying this has been a mess even before any, weather, hit the campus. And so, he's going to have to apologize because he snapped out. And he's also, according to him, working without a contract right now. So he's putting all this effort in with, his boys, that being his team, other staff members, to clean that area up. And according to him, he doesn't even have a contract just yet, let alone the office wasn't even cleaned out before he got there. So he had a point. It
sounds like maybe that office cleaning or lack thereof was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I think so too.
Right?
I think so too. All right, Pepsi and the NFL are teaming up with Black businesses, bringing attention and exposure to Black-owned restaurants across the country through its Dig In program. In its third year, the NFL and a host of other organizations, including the National Urban League, have used the Dig In program to sponsor lunches for corporate executives and staffers around the country, providing Black-owned restaurants with an infusion of money to help their businesses. The program provides Black-owned restaurants with the business resources and catering opportunities to help them financially. The NFL joined the Dig In program to add to its growing list of initiatives that increase diversity and business opportunities for Black entrepreneurs across the country.
All right, big news for Bowie State University, as students will now have the opportunity to participate in a new program designed to increase the number and diversity of individuals entering the government cybersecurity workforce. The National Science Foundation program is providing more than $29 million in new funding this year to 9 universities to support developing students for cybersecurity positions with the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and other federal agencies. Bowie State is the only HBCU that received a grant this year to participate. The program is offering 2-year scholarships for those majoring in cybersecurity under a $2.1 million grant from the foundation. We love to see this. You know, we had reported not too long ago that the governor-elect, is he governor yet? Governor Westmore?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so Governor Westmore of Maryland has been working really closely with the congressional delegation and President Biden to try and get them to move the FBI headquarters to Maryland, right? Which would be a huge boon, huge economic boon to Maryland, and would be a part of a pipeline of students going from places like Bowie State into positions at the FBI and other federal agencies. And so exciting news for the folks over at Bowie State.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a great program. So is it with Pepsi. Speaking of pipelines, I do believe I said lunches. It's launches. They're providing launches for these small businesses. A great look for Pepsi, especially with the big game on the way. You know, everything is done with intention.
That's right. That's right.
Good press.
That's right.
Really
You're
press.
absolutely right.
Oh,
well, coming up, Boosie wants a pardon. We'll tell you from which state.
Plus, Dr. Dre is making quite the sale. We'll tell you what's up for purchase and the asking price when we return.
You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. We'll be right back after this.